Welcome on the channel Voices of Reddit. Today we have an intriguing story about the
This entire situation deeply hurts me and breaks my husband's heart. My name is Sean. I'm 37 years old. My husband is Zach, 36, and my son is 16. Over a decade ago, I divorced my ex-wife after discovering she had been cheating on me throughout our marriage. Despite this, we managed to maintain a good relationship for the sake of our son. When I was 28, and my son was 7, I met Zach. We hit it off instantly. After a long period of being single, I was ready for a new relationship, and Zach was exactly who I was looking for. We had so much in common that it felt like fate had brought us together. Looking back, I realize I would go through all those hardships again if it meant ending up with him. One of the main topics for us was my son. Zach was initially a bit cautious due to the circumstances, but he had always dreamed of having a family, and I was eager for them to meet. After a year of dating, I introduced them to each other. My son and Zach quickly became close friends. They spent a lot of time together, playing video games and doing various activities. When my son was 10, he started calling Zach his second dad, which was incredibly touching. Eventually, Zach moved in with us, and our life was just wonderful. Everything was going perfectly until something happened that broke our hearts. Last weekend, my son invited 3 of his friends over to our house. They were playing video games in his room while I went out to do some grocery shopping. Zach stayed home, relaxing in the living room. My son's room is adjacent to the living room, and if they're being loud, it's easy to overhear their conversations. I don't know exactly how it started, but the boys began making extremely homophobic remarks. One of his friends asked my son what it was like to have a gay dad. My son laughed and said it sucked. They continued to say terrible things, making inappropriate and offensive comments about Zach. My husband sat in the living room, hearing every word. He couldn't believe what he was hearing and silently cried from the pain and disappointment. When I returned home a couple of hours later, I found Zach sitting in the car with a packed bag. He was ready to leave but didn't want to leave my son alone. Shocked, I asked him what had happened. Zach told me everything he had overheard. I tried to understand the situation, assuring him that my son couldn't have meant it seriously, that he was just a foolish teenager trying to look cool in front of his friends. But Zach was deeply hurt. Zach left, and I went back into the house to have a serious talk with my son. His friends had left, and we spent several hours in a tense conversation. Initially, my son showed no remorse and even agreed with what his friends had said. I asked him if he truly believed that Zach could have ever harmed him in any way, and he replied, "No, but who knows what kids might forget from their childhood." Those words were the last straw for me. I told him to pack his things because he was going to live with his mother. His mother lives 3 hours away from us, which meant a new school, new friends, and less personal space since he'd have to share a room with his stepbrother. Upon hearing this, my son immediately changed his attitude. He cried and begged me not to send him away, claiming he didn't mean what he said and was just trying to impress his friends. I asked why he continued to stand by his words after his friends had left, but he couldn't give me an answer. I called my ex-wife and explained the situation to her. She agreed that what our son did was unacceptable and required serious consequences. Now, my son is living with his mother, and my husband has returned home. But every night, Zach cries. It's as if he's grieving the lost connection with my son. I don't want them to lose the special bond they once had. I understand that my son did something terrible, but such accusations can ruin a person's life. My son calls me every day, saying he misses us and wants to come home. I stay strong during the calls, but afterward, I break down, and Zach tries to comfort me. He offers to let my son come back while he leaves, but I can't allow that. Recently, I decided to spend a day with my son to try to understand the situation better. Many people have accused me of not taking his words seriously, but that's not true. I asked him several times if Zach had ever harmed him in any way, and each time he said no. I asked him several important questions. Why did you say such dangerous things? My son admitted that he felt rejected by Zach. Lately, Zach had been spending less time with him. They used to do everything together, sports, games, conversations, but a few months ago, Zach decided he needed a bit more personal space and started developing his social life outside of home. He was worried that when my son left for college, he would feel empty and wanted to have his own interests. I supported this decision, but apparently, my son felt abandoned. Do you understand how dangerous it is to say such things if they're not true? He said he understood but thought that no one was listening and was just going along with his friends. I asked why he continued to insist on his statements after they had left, and he confessed that he didn't want to back down from what he had said, even if he realized it was wrong. "Why are you friends with people who say such horrible things about your family?" He replied that he was afraid of becoming their target if he stopped hanging out with them. They already occasionally teased him about having two dads, and over time, this began to affect his own perception of Zach. The combination of their negative influence and feeling distanced from Zach led him to say those terrible things. "Why didn't you talk to us about how you were feeling?" He said he didn't want to start a conflict, especially if he wasn't even sure how he felt. He was confused and didn't know how to express his feelings. After a long conversation, I realized that this was a series of misunderstandings and a lack of open communication. We agreed on the following steps. My son will continue living with his mother for a while, and will assess the situation each month. He agreed to individual therapy and family sessions. We hope that, over time, he can return home. At the end of our talk, my son asked if Zach would want to hear his apology. I told him that Zach would be happy to hear from him. They spoke on the phone, and although Zach still feels guilty, I believe it's the first step toward rebuilding their relationship. I understand that many may disagree with my actions, but I'm trying to do what's best for my family's well-being. I hope that, over time, we can overcome this difficult situation and become the happy family we once were.